Hello, and welcome to the first in a series of videos on Cobblestone's Data Import Manager. The Data Import Manager is Cobblestone's primary in-house tool to import legacy metadata into Cobblestone Contract Insight. That basically means that if you would like to upload, say, 500 contracts into Cobblestone, or all of your existing employees, or your entire vendor list, you can use the Data Import Manager to upload that information. The Data Import Manager is most often used when organizations first sign up with Cobblestone, right? You have, let's say, existing contracts you store in another system or an Excel file or a SharePoint or something. I want to upload all of that data into the system. This is a very common way to do that. This tool can be used for existing clients who want to expand the system, add more data into it, or even occasionally perform bulk system updates. Now, I should acknowledge that this tool is something that's usually performed as a professional service. Clients and system admins are able to do this themselves, but it's just often something that we perform along with our clients. So just be aware of that. If you just want kind of the short and sweet version, if you are a new organization and would like Cobblestone to mostly do this for you, I would skip ahead to the second video. The second video will kind of be a short and sweet view of what you'll be doing as your part in importing legacy data into the system. So skip ahead to that if you just want the short and sweet version of this. But this series of videos in the Data Import Manager will be broken into 3 videos. The first is going to be discussing how to actually build the data import template. A quick example is on the slide here, at the bottom right screenshot, right? To import legacy data into the system using the Data Import Manager, we have to build an import template. Okay, this will basically have column headers with all of the data that you wish to import, and we'll basically fill this out eventually with all of the data we would like to import into the system. But this template does have to be built, right? It's not all that hard to do, but it is a step usually that Cobblestone will perform for you, but even so. So step 1, video 1, will be kind of building this template. Video 2 is going to be filling out this template, right? Basically putting in all the data. There's just some rules of thumb to follow when you're doing that. So again, if you are an existing client and you just want kind of the short and sweet version, you could just skip ahead if you'd like to the video explaining how to fill out the template. That's usually more practical. And then video 3, once you have a completed and filled out template, we'll just have to import that, kind of upload that to the system to migrate all of the data from the spreadsheet into Cobblestone Contract Insight. So video 3 will be the upload. So if that all makes sense, let's actually get started with this. So I'm going to jump into my system now, go up to my main menu, down to Manage Setup, down to Account Maintenance, and then on the side menu, go under the Data Processing icon, and then choose the Data Import Manager. There are a variety of other importing tools that we can use, but the Data Import Manager is the most common option and what we'll be covering today, of course. So I'll choose the Data Import Manager. Here I have a list of all of the previous import files that I've used in my system. You will not have any here unless you've used the Data Import Manager in the past. I want to look over at the right-hand side under the Inbound Integration Wizard. Right, there's 4 tabs here that we'll be walking through. Right now, we're technically in the View Templates tab, View Templates page at the moment. If we want to add a new item, we'll go to Add Template. All right, and this is pretty straightforward. We'll just fill this out with the information you'd like to upload. We just have to create the template as in kind of an overview to start. Put in the display name. So let's say we want to import, say, legacy contracts, right? We'll just call it something basic. legacy contracts. Something short and sweet. That's the display name, the friendly name. Next, the file name. This is not hard, but a little bit more technical. There's really one thing to be aware of. Long story short, when you name this, you have to name it with legacy contracts or whatever you want to call it, and end it with .csv at the end. You have to literally type in .csv at the end. And let me just explain why that is so you're aware. Essentially, this file name here on the template in the system must exactly match the file name of the data import template that you upload. So if this says legacy contracts.csv, this file name has to say, not test25, has to say legacy contracts.csv. Okay, and only when they identically match will the migration be successful. Okay, so they must match. That's the first thing to know here. The second thing is that the data import manager only accepts CSV files in the import process. It only accepts CSV files. And the funny thing about CSV files, when you save an Excel file as a CSV, it will kind of add .csv to the end of the file name. So if I save this, I'm going to test25 as a CSV file, it will be called test25.csv. So it kind of changes the name of the file, right? So you'll call it legacy contracts. It will download as an Excel file called legacy contracts. But when you save it as a CSV file, it will then add .csv to the name. So we're kind of preemptively adjusting for that. And then here in the file name, we're just typing in legacy contracts.csv. So long story short, just type that in at the end, and that won't be an issue when you do your import. Next, we have linked to. This is the section of the system to which you want to import the data, the table or subtable to import. It usually defaults to amendments, as is just an alphabetized list. But I'm going to go with contract details today. Just choose the table of the system to which you want to import. If you are importing to contracts, you probably want to choose contract details. If you're importing companies, choose vendors, customers. If you're importing employees, choose employee details, etc. Just choose the primary table most of the time of the data you wish to import. And I'll click Save. Okay. When I click Save, it automatically takes me to the next tab down, which is Manage Fields, right? Data Import Manager Field Mappings, as you can tell by the breadcrumb at the top. What we're doing here, essentially, is just choosing the column headers we want in our data import template, right? In other words, we want to choose the data we wish to import, right? Just choose the data you wish to import. So, of course, this stands to reason that you have to make sure the fields are already in the system. So if you want to import the contract amount and the budget amount and a description, you have to make sure that those are fields already in the system. Those examples I just named are by default, but still, if you have any special fields, special data you want to import and it's not in the system by default, you have to add a field to capture the data that you import. So I'm going to add a few of the fields here. We'll fast forward just a moment after I fill this out. Okay, so I selected a few fields over on the right-hand side, and these will be the columns, essentially, the data I choose to import with the tool. And now let me just explain a few things. So I just chose the field, click the right arrow, and edit it. I chose the contract title, the amount, the counterparty name, the employee assigned, the effective date, the expiration date, and the contract ID. A few things with this. First, the order of these fields doesn't really make a difference. I did order them in a way that makes sense to me, but it doesn't really make a difference. It will determine the order of the columns in the template, but the order of the columns doesn't matter. Once you import it, they'll just kind of fly into the system, and it doesn't really matter the order of the columns. Okay, so not really a big deal there, but you could fill that out. Same as the friendly name. If I wanted to change this to contract name instead of contract title, I sure could. It's just for reviewing. It would just change the name here. This would say contract name instead of contract title. It does not really make a difference, but you could do that if you want to. Description, same thing. You can add a description, but I usually shrug my shoulders at that. Then there are a few things I do want to discuss. This update only button, the is filter button, and the requires lookup button. Let's start with requires lookup because that's relevant to what we're talking about right now with a bulk data import. So this takes a little bit of explanation. If you watch some of the previous videos, especially on reporting and fields, this might make a bit more sense to you. But Cobblestone, as we talked about in the past, is a database comprised of tables, right? Like contracts, employees, companies, contract types, departments. Those are all tables that house information. And all of those tables identify, the system identifies the data in those tables by ID number. So, for example, all of the companies in my system are tracked by the ID number. All of the employees are tracked by the ID number. So looking at Cobblestone software in my system, it would not Cobblestone wouldn't see it as the company name Cobblestone software. It would see it as, oh, company ID 11, which equals Cobblestone software maybe. It wouldn't see me as employee Tyler Holzer. If I'm trying to look at that table, it would say, oh, employee ID 5, right? Get my meaning with this? So when you're trying to reference one of these tables, you have to use the ID number. So that principle extends to the data import manager as well. If I'm trying to upload Cobblestone software, I probably have to put an ID number 12 here, right? If that's Cobblestone's ID number in my system. If this is an NDA, I have to put 34, which might be the NDA ID number. Get my meaning with this? You have to use the ID number for all of these tables when you're doing the import, so Cobblestone understands what that information is. Cobblestone does not necessarily know what NDA is or what that company is called. It knows it by the ID number. Now, all that to say, there is a workaround for that, pretty easy one. It requires lookup. If you check requires lookup on one of these fields that requires the ID number, such as the company name that I'm using here, then I can just input the friendly name, right? So I did that here. In this example, like employee, I put in Tyler Holzer, which I used requires lookup for that. Department, I put legal, not like the ID number, because I used requires lookup on the field. Okay, so you have to use this requires lookup sometimes if you prefer to put in the friendly name as opposed to the ID number. The only fickle part of this is, of course, you have to know which fields you should use requires lookup, but also you do have to put in like the name of that company or the employee exactly. If it's not like the exact name as the system has it, the import would not be successful. So that's requires lookup. Next, I have is filter and update only. Let me just start by saying that we can perform bulk data update with this tool. If I just want to do an update and not any sort of bulk import, I could just choose update only. Okay, and it will ignore any of the importing features of the data import manager. If you are doing that, or you're just doing an update along with an import, you do have to choose an is filter, choose a field to be a filter. The thing to know about this is that the filtered field is kind of like the reference field, and this must be a unique identifier, right? Like an ID number, maybe the contract title, right? If that's unique in your system, you have to choose a unique field that does not duplicate in your system, and that usually boils down to an ID number. In this case, it's a contract ID. So I would have that checked if I am doing a data import with the tool. So I would save this. That saves all of my fields, and I'm almost done now. Now I just want to go back to view templates. There's legacy contracts.csv, and I'll just click template to download the file. And now we'll skip ahead to the next video to talk about importing data into the template.